And the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having us. We're excited to be here. We'll try to make this as interesting as possible. We're really going to be presenting on, it's really the same presentation we give to architects quite often. Added a few slides, a few more technical slides that we'll go over. Really want this to be, pop in at any moment and ask questions. If I'm not covering something that you want to cover, then don't be shy and jumping in. So let me see if I can get to my screen. All right. Now, of course, I'm not going to find it. There we go. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Bob Paul. Jack Paul's with us. Jeff Robson, who's the third member of our team, is actually on vacation this week, so he couldn't join us. He usually gives these presentations because he's a better presenter than I am, and then I throw in a few comments. But just want to say thank you again, and let's get going. So in Southern California, BPA Products handles, of course, Viracon, and then WW Glass, Ellison, Vetrotech, and Bentheim. In Northern California with Jack, it's just Viracon. So, a lot of you guys know most of this information, but I'm just going to go over it quickly anyway. Who is Viracon? Viracon's the only company in North America that is a single source fabricator. In other words, they do everything to the glass. We have the capabilities with all of our processes, when you put them all together, literally to have millions of combinations or millions of products from those combinations. We have more processes under one roof, which is about 1.6 million square feet under roof in Minnesota. And we're the only fabricator in North America to do our own coatings. So, you have Viracon in North America, then you have the regional fabricator. And what's the difference? And so this model kind of tells you. In the blue, you'll see that, well, first of all, none of the fabricators make raw glass. That's, I run into that all the time with architects where they think that it's Viracon's raw glass, and it's not. We buy the raw glass from all of the US manufacturers, Vitro, Guardian, AGC, Cardinal, and NSG. So, and so do the regional fabricators. So we both buy the glass from the raw glass manufacturer. When Viracon buys it, we're buying it just the raw glass. We bring it into the factory, we cut it to size, and then if it needs any silk screen or digital print, that would be the first thing that happens. And then from there, that if it is printed, the heat treating process would bake that into the surface. If it's not printed, we would be heat treating it next anyway. And then, whoops, didn't mean to do that. Let me go back. How do I get this back? Oh, shoot. All right. Oh, boy. Sorry, guys. Okay. So we would heat treat it and then apply the coating and then insulate it, assemble it, either laminate it or insulate it. What's different with the regional fabricators that they're buying, of course, the raw glass, but also raw glass with a coating that's on the glass. They bring it into house, they cut the glass, and if they print it, it's going to have to be on a different surface because they can't put it on the same surface as the coating. So typically it would be on the third surface, and then they heat treat the glass and then finally insulate it or laminate it. So they are heat treating it after the glass has been coated already, and that's what they call post-tempered versus Viracon's model, which is pre-tempered. So why does that matter? Why does pre-tempering, why is it better? Number one, we minimize distortion. When glass gets heat treated, it goes down the oven where we heat it to a pretty precise temperature to soften it. And then it goes into the air quench where we blow very rapidly, we blow air on it to either heat strengthen or temper the glass. We're heating the glass to that temperature, and we're heating a uniform substrate versus the regional fabricator who's heating a piece of glass that on one surface has a low E coating. And what does a low E coating, what's it supposed to do? It's meant to reflect heat. So it makes it a little more difficult for them to get that glass to the right temperature. If they don't, the most common mistake is that it gets overheated and then it sags in the rollers, it hits that quench, and now you've induced roller wave distortion into the glass. So Virocon's heat treating it before we put the coating on so that the coating isn't interfering in our process. We do have the tightest flatness spec in North America. And the other thing as well is that we're able, with this process, we're able to apply any coating to any thickness of glass and allow the silk screen to be on the second surface. So we would put the silk screen on first and the coating over the top of it. And the final thing is that we're able to give a single source warranty, whereas the regional fabricator, there would be a warranty for the coating versus, and a second warranty for the insulated unit. So this is a project in Ohio that Virocon did. I believe it's a VRE 54. Virocon was spec'd and sold the job, and it was put up. When you look at roller wave distortion, the only way, or distortion in general, the only way you can tell it's distorted is if you have an image in the reflection. So in other words, if we put a building on top of a hill and the only thing you're seeing is sky, it could be the most distorted glass in the world and you'll never know it because you don't have anything in reflection. So in this photograph, you can see in reflection the building behind, and you can see how relatively straight those lines are. So phase 2 came around on this building, which was a mirror image of phase 1. Once again, Virocon was specified. The glazing contractor submitted a substitution, I think, with a little bit of a cost savings, and the owner or GC and architect accepted it, and this is what phase 2 came out as, which sits right next to. I'm not sure if it's across the street or exactly next door, but that's what they ended up with. So we had another project in Southern California where Solar 70 was specified, and they supplied mock-ups for the project. And they had picked Solar 70 because in the samples, they thought that the Solar 70 was just a little more neutral in transmitted color than Virocon's. If you look at this photograph and you look at two different regional fabricators doing the Solar 70 and then Virocon, the one on the right, I think you can see that if you look at the color of the wood, Virocon's is actually just a little more neutral than the Solar 70 in transmitted color. When Vitro supplies samples to an architect, those samples are annealed, right? Just as Virocon's are. But when their product when Solar 70 gets heat treated, it actually changes the color slightly and turns it greener than the annealed sample. So if they have a building that might have heat strengthened insulated units, and then annealed insulated units, even though that's not very common these days, they would put the coating for the annealed, they would put the coating on a clear substrate, And then for the heat treated, they put it on a low iron or acuity, just because once they've heat treated it, it becomes a little greener. And what's really noticeable in the difference is when you get off angle at the SolarBand 70, it really starts to get green on you. Whereas Viracon, we paid very close attention when we developed this coating to stabilize any off-angle color. And the main reason as well on the project that we were called in to bring mock-ups on, the reason we were called in was because of anisotropy. And you guys are definitely familiar with anisotropy in Southern California anyway. So this was the mock-up taken, the photo on the left, taken with just an iPhone camera. And you can see the anisotropy on the Vitro versus Viracon's very limited anisotropy. And then the picture on the right is an airport in Florida. And I believe Techno was the supplier of that glass. But anisotropy is caused by variance in the compression layer of the glass. So imagine this glass going down the tempering line, and when it goes into the quench, where you're cooling the surfaces, those rollers that the glass is rolling on are wrapped in Kevlar. And so when that glass is getting cooled by the air, you're going to have a slightly different temperature where it's on the Kevlar versus where it's not on the Kevlar, and that changes the PSI of compression very slightly. And so in polarized light, it actually starts to show up. Viracon about 10 years ago, and it was a project, it's actually probably longer than 10 years ago, when we did the Ron Reagan library with you guys, and there was a structural glass wall, and I don't remember who supplied you guys that system, but the anisotropy was really bad, and from Viracon. And it was after that we invested millions of dollars retrofitting all of our tempering ovens and making sure that any new tempering ovens were set up the way we needed them set up to reduce the anisotropy. So we're going to talk a little bit about design considerations and what they are and what they mean to any given project. We'll talk about the VTS spacer, thicker substrates, printing, laminated, heat soaking, exterior reflectance. I also threw in a slide for substrates and Viracon nomenclature, as well as room side low E. So the VTS spacer. Most of you are familiar with it, but it's something we came out with a number of years ago. It's what's considered warm edge spacer, and basically it's all about the U value of the insulated unit, improving the U value, and thus the U factor for you guys. Instead of a traditional boxed aluminum spacer, this is a single component spacer that is a solid. There's a robotic head on our IG line that very precisely moves around the perimeter of the glass, applying the spacer. It has a starting point, and then it comes back around and actually goes past the starting point. So there's a little flap, and then that unit slides down to the next machine, which forms where the flap is and joins it together. So there's no splices in the spacer as compared to a traditional aluminum box spacer. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the black painted aluminum spacers where there's a key at the splice, and if that key pulls apart at all, you get this nice silver shiner, and it's usually not appreciated by the architect. So this gets rid of that. The glass or the spacer chemically bonds to that glass surface, So as compared to a traditional spacer, which has a PIB, polyisobutylene primary seal that's applied to the shoulder of the spacer and then mechanically pressed onto the glass. So when the robotic head applies this, it chemically bonds to the glass surface. It's got a uniform matte black finish, and the improvement is 14% over a traditional aluminum spacer and about 9% over a stainless steel spacer. It automatically comes with argon in the fill, and the reason for that is to remove any atmospheric moisture that may happen to be in the factory. In the traditional spacer, the hollow box spacer, we put desiccant in the center of it, the fast absorbing desiccant, and that would soak up any moisture. Well, this doesn't have, since it's solid, it doesn't have the ability to quickly remove any moisture. So the way we do that is we flood the chamber with argon, which takes out any moisture that's in the air. Thicker substrates, a number of firms, SOM, Gensler, and we're seeing more and more architectural firms start specifying a thicker outboard, primarily because of flatness. And sometimes because the size, the sizes are getting so large that when we run a glass strength analysis, we might need a thicker substrate to the outboard or the inboard, or both. But if you have a thicker substrate on the outboard, you're going to get a flatter appearing piece of glass. If you remember the picture of the building that looked really distorted, some of that was negative air, and negative air is caused by either when it's very cold outside, or you change elevations from a higher elevation where it's fabricated and sealed, because it is a sealed vessel, and then take it to a lower elevation. The volume changes, the volume is going to go down, and so you're going to have a little deflection in that glass. If you have a 3/8 or 5/16 outboard and a 1/4 inch inboard, that inboard light is actually going to be the one to move before the outboard light does. So it minimizes the distortion that's viewed from the outside. Of course, I mentioned that with larger sizes, we might need to go to the thicker outboard. And then acoustics. If you look at a quarter insulated unit, you have a 35 STC. If you change one of those to 5/16 or 3/8, you'd get a 39 or 38, and then respectively a 39 STC. Printing. Today, printing is either silk screening or digitally printing the glass. Oftentimes it's done for an aesthetic purpose. They have a design. I think of a project that I actually worked on when I was in Northern California, the Moscone expansion, which has they look like not paper clips, but little pins that go all around the building. And that was obviously done for aesthetics. That's how we achieve bird friendly, by putting various patterns on the number 2 surface of the glass before the coating. And depending upon the pattern, it'll tell you the threat level that it'll meet. Bird friendly today is sometimes you'll see it in a spec and it'll just be just that, bird friendly. Sometimes they'll list a threat level. And so you have to pay attention to whatever municipality might be putting in that code. When we do it, like I said earlier, we're doing it on the second surface with the coating also on the second surface. The biggest performing thing in that printing does is improve the SHGC. So we're going to get usually, depending upon the amount of coverage, we're going to get pretty significant improvements in the SHGC. And of course, what a lot of the architects like is reducing the light transmission, but not changing the quality of that light coming into the space. Laminated glass. We're seeing more and more acoustical requirements on jobs. I'm sure you guys are as well. And laminated glass is one of the ways we deal with it, especially when we're looking to improve the higher frequency noises that you would hear. That's where the interlayer, the PVB interlayer, because it's soft, it will absorb those, especially the higher frequencies. Laminated glass, of course, also adds a level of security. I don't believe we have the testing anymore, but I believe it's UL 952, which is burglar resistance. Just an 060 interlayer with 2 layers of could be as thin as 3/16 or 1/4 inch would meet that UL level. So we also use it for blast and hurricane, primarily because it acts like a net. If you imagine a bomb blast on the outside of the building, you have that concussion hitting the skin of the building. We actually want the glass to break, and the interlayer acts like a net rather than that whole force getting kicked out to the frames. If it were a real stiff glass in the frames, it would kick that energy to the frames and blow the frames in. So that's one of the reasons we use laminated glass for blast and even hurricanes. The interlayer in the laminated blocks 99% of the UV, so it's only allowing 1%. And then, as you see in this photograph with the Vanceva, we can achieve almost virtually any color, and that can be in a transparent nature, or it can also be in like a translucent color as well. Heat soaking. Fun stuff. I'm sure you've noticed on the quotes that when you request a quote for tempered glass, we're automatically now putting in the heat soak. We're building in the cost for heat soak, and for you to decline it, we do have a Pam or Kaya would have a note underneath that if you want to take it out, take out X amount of money, and we can do that. Is everybody familiar with what nickel sulfide is? Do you want me to go through that, or Vince?
You should go through it. There's people here who wouldn't know what that is. Go through it.
All right. So nickel sulfide has been around forever. Well, ever since they've started tempering glass and making float glass. Basically, it's an impurity that the impurity either from a batch material or something falls into the float tank. A float tank is, if you imagine about a half of a football field that goes about 6 stories deep and has molten glass and basically flamethrowers across the top that heat that batch material and the raw glass to the point of being in a liquid. If something nickel rich, be it a bolt, a wrench, something from the batch material is in that tank, that heat is going to break it down into pinhead size or smaller pieces. When they make raw glass, they actually start a siphon out of the float tank, and then it goes up, basically a conveyor. Thickness of glass is determined by where they have the width of the ribbon coming out. So if they If they bring the sides in, it's going to be thicker, and if they move them out, it's a thinner piece of glass. So you have this nickel-rich impurity is going to be in that glass if it fell into the tank, and it's not going to be just one piece of glass. It's going to be throughout that batch, which is fine. If that glass is not tempered, no one will ever know it, and it'll be fine. Once you temper it, though, that little impurity has a little gas bubble around it. And tempered glass, as I mentioned earlier, is made by blowing large amounts of air on all the surfaces so that you're compressing the surfaces, and the core of the glass is in tension. So if you look at a cross section of a tempered piece of glass, you actually have 3 layers. You have the 2 compression layers, and then the core is what we call the tension layer. So that little impurity with time and heat is going to expand. If it hits the compression layer, it automatically or spontaneously pops that piece of glass. Tempered glass breaks because the compression layer has been penetrated. Think of a pro basketball player dunking and the backboard shattering down on the court. The reason it did was a piece of the metal from the rim punctured the compression layer, and it exploded. So that's what nickel sulfide is. How do we prevent it from happening? We heat soak the glass. We basically cut the glass, temper it, put it into a heat soak oven for a specific amount of time at a specific temperature. If there's a nickel sulfide inclusion anywhere in that thickness, it's going to have grown enough through the calculations of how long to be in there that it would pop the glass. If it pops in the heat soak oven, we remove that glass and we start over. Those that didn't pop, we continue with fabrication. So that's heat soaking. Viracon gives a warranty for heat soak glass at a rate of 3 per 1,000 for 10 years, and it's the only warranty in the industry that actually covers labor replacement as well. Questions on that?
Bob, what was the reason that Viracon's gone to now including that standard on your quotes?
I think primarily, Vince, it's that people were not offering it, and so then when there was a problem, we would get a call from the owner or from the architect, someone down the line saying, well, how come this glass wasn't heat soaked? And well, we offered it, it's on our quotes, and there turns out to be a lot of pointing.
I had a question on that. So is it built into your number, or is it broken out as a separate number?
So what you will see is that it's built in on the main number, and then below it's broken out if you want to deduct it out of the overall number.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It kind of brings to light a conversation that I was just having with an architect the other day, and they're like, "Oh, one of the glass manufacturers says that heat soaking is included in the price," and I was like, "I've never seen that included." So maybe that's why they were saying that.
Yeah, it could be. I know, for example, when W&W does a structural glass wall, everything is, they're pricing it a little different. They're pricing the whole package, but all of theirs would be heat soaked, just included. So, and that's, Viracon is including it, but giving you an out if you want to pull it out.
And when was that change made? Was that just recently?
Relatively recently, I would say, boy, right around the beginning of the year.
Okay, so kind of the same time where you guys broke out the surcharge and everything too.
Yeah, that came a little bit after, I think,
Okay.
but close.
Cool.
Just speculating, but since we're no longer doing specification reviews, it just covers that as well. I
Yeah,
think, right?
yep. It's a good point. So earlier we talked about transmitted color, and here's a great photo, a great example of exterior reflection and really what reflection does to the look of a building. On the left is the VNE 163 with a 10% exterior reflection, and on the right is the VRE 65 with 27%. The glass on the left looks very like black hole-ish, whereas the glass on the right with 27%, you're still able to see into the building slightly, but not, it's not a black hole, and it just gives a bit of life to the glass skin. So, you know, I get asked a lot, hey, I want something really, really light in reflectance because I want a light looking building. And so you have to you know, come back to them with, are you sure you want light reflectance? If you want a light looking building, you probably want to increase the reflectance a little bit to get a little life in it. So some of our new products, we'll go through here real quick. The Viracon Haleo partnership, our newest coatings, our enhanced coatings, the room side low E, and then the pure mid iron substrate. So about 6 to 8 months ago, after I think about 5 years of kind of courting back and forth, Viracon and Haleo came to an agreement and created Viracon Plus Smart Glass by Haleo, which is just our partnership. What makes it different from View or Sage? The View and Sage really have kind of an amber, in the clear state, more of an amber color, and in the tinted state, a very strong blue color. And the Haleos is more of a closer to clear and then to a neutral gray when it's tinted the most. The Sage and View tint levels, there's 4 of them. Each company offers 4 levels of tint, so you can go completely clear, completely tint, and then 2 places in between. And the Haleo really has unlimited tint levels from all the way clear to all the way tinted. When you look at the transitioning from clear to tint or tint to clear, it's very uniform. The other players, it's more like an iris effect coming in from the outside towards the center, which tends to draw your eyes to that rather than looking through the glass. And finally, for them to change completely from clear to tint is a 30-minute time frame. And with the Haleo, it's actually under 3 minutes. And so if you think about going from completely clear to just a little bit tinted, you're talking about literally seconds. We put with the Haleo product, we have a sky camera. And so in real time, you can have that glass change depending upon the level of clouds that are coming in or how clear it is. And it happens, you know, almost right away. Whereas for Sage and View, they almost have to do a forecast of what's coming down, you know, 30 minutes from now.
Yeah, and on that point, I have a video I could share with maybe with you, Vince, and you can distribute to the team, where it kind of illustrates what Bob was just mentioning, the difference in the time. It's a time lapse, so you can see how much quicker Haleo is than the competition. You can also see how uniform it is. It's like a 5 minute video, but it's a great visual.
I'm wondering if some of us may have seen that video from the training that we did a couple
Oh,
months
you know
ago.
what? Yeah, that could be.
But some people haven't seen that. So yeah, if you've got that or want to send a link to it, we can.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Absolutely.
So Vincent, I know you wanted to touch on this a little bit. So substrates available in the marketplace today. You notice if you look at the bottom right of the substrates, it has the number 35. So there's certainly not 35 colors up there, but over the years, there have been 35 substrates created. A number of those have gone away from the flow glass suppliers for whatever reason, just discontinued them. But when I started back in the old days, the highest number was 6. So we had clear green, gray, bronze, blue, and blue green. So they've added a lot. In our nomenclature, where those numbers come into play is after the first set of letters. First set of letters is giving you the coding family or the coding type. The VE would be a Viracon low E. The VNE would be a Viracon neutral low E. We have VRE, which is Viracon, originally was Viracon reflective low E. Reflective had a negative connotation. We changed that to radiant low E. So it's really just telling you the coding family. And then the next number is the outboard light substrate. So 1 equals clear, 2 is green, 3 is gray, 35 is pure mid iron. And we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. And then the next number is the nominal transmittance of that coding, light transmittance of that coding when it's applied to a clear substrate. You'll see in a couple more slides that the new codings have 4 digits now rather than 2. Those 4 digits are, the first 2 of the 4 are the light transmittance, just like we used to do it. But then we add 2 digits, which also tells you the SHGC. So one of the other things that we've seen is the VRE codings, especially the VRE, but VRE, the VE codings like VE48, VE42, really popular aesthetically for architects. But as the energy codes have gotten stricter and stricter, the SHGCs can't keep up. So they were at risk of kind of going by the wayside. So what we did was we developed an extremely neutral coding focusing on SHGC that we applied to the third surface. So for example, a VZRE 24-54, the one right in the middle, that is has the VRE 2454 on the number 2 surface. I'm sorry, the one next to that, the VZRE 24-54, has the VRE 24 on the number 2 surface, and then what we call an VZSC coding on the third surface, really neutral. This was a mock-up for the Irvine company for the Spectrum Terrace. They wanted to see 2 things. Number one, we will typically always default to OptiWhite low iron. We carry 3 manufacturers of low iron: OptiWhite, Starfire, and Ultra Clear. From an availability standpoint, we are most comfortable with the OptiWhite. We know we can get it quickly. We know we can get as much of it as we need. And we don't have the same warm fuzzies with Starfire or Ultra Clear. So that was the case. In this case, the Irvine company likes Starfire. Donald Bren likes Starfire. But we were concerned it wasn't going to be available in time for their job. And then they also wanted to see for buildings in the future, what are they going to do to meet the performance? So we showed them the VRE 1354, which is that's their spec. Then the one to the left of that is the enhanced version, and nobody could tell the difference. And the same thing from the Starfire to the OptiWhite, nobody that could tell the difference. We went out 2 times during the day and spent over an hour, and they stared at this every which way and said it all looked the same. So then in this upper corner up here is we had one slot open. This is a Halio uncoated in its darkest state. But we had this one little slot left open, and we put in one of our newest coatings, which is a VRE. The 31 means the ultra clear, and then it's the 31 light transmission 0.17 SHGC. And you can see it's pretty similar. It's going to be a lower reflectivity than the VRE 2454 or the VRE 54. It's got about 27% versus 30-some% in reflectivity. But we think it's going to be a very popular coating. So room side low E.
Hey, Bob, before you get to that, and if you have another slide on this, that's fine. But can you define for the group? I mean, because we've got some people very new, solar heat gain coefficient. I mean, when we talk about that, what is that?
So when we send you a cut sheet of performance, it is the solar and optical data. And we are measuring things like SHGC, solar heat gain coefficient. Solar heat gain coefficient is basically when that glass is getting hit by the sun, how much of that heat is going directly into the building. So if I've got an SHGC of 0.4, it's basically saying that it's blocking 60% and only 40% of that heat is going in. Therefore, the lower the number, the better. So a 0.25 is better than a 0.40. It used to be that we called it shading coefficient, and a shading coefficient is a comparative value. It takes as the baseline a piece of 1/8 inch glass and gives it a value of 1. And then any glass that you're looking at, it's comparing it to that. So if it had a 0.50, it means it's 50% better than a piece of 1/8 inch clear glass. They went away from that and said, let's just measure the amount of heat through the given glass, and that's SHGC. So.
And then that's different. The other phrase we always hear when we're talking performance is U value.
Yep.
And U value is that temperature transmissions, but not from direct sunlight, just
correct.
Ambient temperature.
Yep. So think of U value, and U value is literally mathematically the reciprocal of the R value. So it's the 1 over. But they use U value rather than R value. The U values, you have a winter and a summer U value, which is another confusing thing. And really, the codes today are only asking for one U value, and they don't say winter or summer. But what is primarily used is the winter U value when they're looking at Title 24 as an example. And so it's when it's 0 degrees outside and 70 degrees inside, how much of that cold is coming in, or how much the heat is going out. That's the U value. It's the insulating value.
And I've heard that in California with projects, a lot of times people are talking about our U values. Everyone always wants to talk about our U values. Oh, what's the U value system? What's the U value system? And it's the primary thing they bring up. But my understanding in the climate of California, the reality is that solar heat gain coefficient is a bigger thermal driver than the U value, with the more, mild climate that we have here in California.
And I would have agreed with that up until about the last year or so. I'm
Okay.
seeing the requirement on the U factor, and this is an important important thing to distinguish as well. The U value is center of glass, has nothing to do with your system.
Mhm.
U factor is taking that glass and the value that's in the center of that glass and combining it with your system to create an overall value, which is called U factor. So I'm seeing U factors become a bigger deal than they used to be. It was always just about the SHGC. We never even discussed U factor. Part of the reason the VTS spacer is becoming more and more popular is, other than its aesthetics, is because of that automatically having argon. I mean, having that argon in lieu of air in the space drops your U value from, let's say, a 2.8 or 2.9 down to a 2.2. So it's pretty significant. The spacer itself helps slightly, and I think Frank or if Bill's on, I know that it only moved it on one of the jobs. It only moved it a point, but it will move it. So that VTS, I think the VTS is a couple of years from now. I would bet anybody here lunch that it'll be at least 80% of what we sell will be VTS, primarily because the U factors are getting stricter.
Mhm.
So talking about U values, room side low E, what is it? Why would you use it? It is all about the U value. Low E coatings that we produce are typically have to be pointed towards the airspace. They have to be protected. The room side low E is what we call a pyrolytic or a hard coat low E. So it's actually made by the raw glass manufacturer, and it's sprayed on during the float glass process. So as that glass is annealing, going from molten to a rigid glass, it becomes part of the glass surface. The coating does. So where you would use it is if we're trying to get a much better U factor. We would possibly put it on the number 4 surface of a regular IG unit, still having the additional U value on the number 2, additional coating, the original coating. But if we put, this just kind of shows you, if you put same coating number 2 surface, argon, and then a room side low E standard IG unit, compare the values to doing a triple IG with that same coating on the number 2, look at the SHGC. It's 0.24 versus 0.22. It's really quite close. The summer U value is the same. The winter U value is just 2 points off. But you also have a 5% higher light transmission. So it really can beef up the U factor performance of a unit. One thing to keep in mind is that it does not have the size capabilities that the rest of our products have. It is restricted to a 72 by 142. And it only is on a clear substrate. It's not available in a low iron substrate. So just something to keep in mind. So a coating that we just saw a couple of weeks ago in Minnesota, and actually took these pictures, is our VNG. We want to throw new letters at you because we don't have enough. And Viracon, does anybody want to guess what the VNG stands for? Come on.
Very new glass.
New gray.
No, I'm sorry?
New gray.
Very good. Viracon neutral gray. 4022. So the 40 is the visible light transmittance, the 22 is the SHGC. In the photo, the far left, the middle, and the far right are all the same. They're the VNG on a clear substrate. And just to show you as a comparison, color and reflectivity, the second from the right is our VRE 4725, which has a 25% reflectivity. This new coating is 19%, which it kind of falls in a great spot because 19 is used a lot in cities where they say cannot be greater than 20, or a lot of them even say can't be greater than 19. If you look at a piece of glass, clear uncoated, is 14% exterior reflectance. So this is just 5% more and gives a little bit of life to the glass, but very see-through. I mean, very transparent as well. The 40% VLT is, at least in my experience and what I tell architects, is almost perfect. You get to 50% or above and you're going to have glare issues. So we think this product is going to be a really good product. So here it is on a sunny day, just a different look. Tends to show the difference a little bit more on the cloudy day, doesn't it? So the other new coatings that we've come up with over the last couple of years are the, well, in order, actually, these would be backwards. It's the 4725, or actually 4322 was first, and then 4725 and 3117. You know, nice, bright, neutral appearance, not the reflectivity of traditional VRE coatings. They're lower, they're ranging in the 25 to 28% reflectance compared to the old VREs range from 30 something up to 43%. So quite a bit higher, but really good performance, you know, all the way down to a 0.17 to a 0.25. And that, once again, that light transmission that's just staying below 50%. Pure mid-iron substrates. You know, clear glass has been around forever, and a number of years ago they came out with low iron glass, and as you guys know, it brought quite a premium. Initially, it was about $2 a square foot add over clear per light. It's come down a little bit. It's $1.50 to you guys today. So for a unit, you'd be paying $3 a square foot to go from clear to low iron. Pure mid-iron came out, well, actually Acuity came out from Vitro a couple of years ago, and we actually were using it. And it was, you know, probably about halfway in between clear and low iron in price, but it was closer to low iron in appearance than it was to clear. So people were going, save 50%, and maybe the Acuity is the way to go. They now market the Acuity as a low iron, even though they originally marketed it as a mid-iron. So I'm not sure why they're doing that, but then pure mid-iron came out, and we no longer handle Acuity. We only use pure mid-iron in that product range. And if you look at the edge, you'll see the difference is relatively strong, all the way from low iron to clear to pure mid-iron. But when you look at the glass face on, the pure mid-iron is hard to distinguish from the low iron. It's really quite close to the low iron. And the pricing is what really is is great. It, instead of being a $1.50 ad over clear, it's 50 cents. So to do an IG unit, quarter inch, you'd be paying $1 rather than $3 for the low iron. So we tend to show low iron first when we're with the architects, and then kind of the fallback position is the mid iron. You know, if they get into budget problems. And that's all I have for you. Questions? Anything on field dimensioning versus guaranteed dimensions, lead times, any particular product size capabilities you'd want to know?
On lead times, how much time does the, if we do the heat soaking on tempered glass, how much time is that adding?
Right now, today, it is adding about a week. We have apparently a number of heat soak ovens on their way towards Viracon that will take us over the top as far as capacity of heat soaking. I don't know the exact timing of that, but I know they're on order, and you know, this year sometime they will get installed, which should then make it a you know, no change in lead time whether you have heat soak or not. Now, I will say from a lead time standpoint in general, you know, you guys do a great job of getting us the LOIs, and we forecast that, and we ask you for all kinds of information on schedule, and Monica or Allison might bombard you with, hey, is this schedule still right? Is it coming? And we do that so that we can predict and stabilize lead times into the future. We're seeing that this first quarter and into March, well, March and into April, what we thought was coming wasn't coming. And so lead times are now 5 weeks. But we're also seeing that those projects didn't go away, they're coming. So now they're going to start rolling on to already existing forecasts. So I would tell you, when you start planning a project for November, a project for December, I'd probably plug in 8 to 10 rather than, you know, 5 to 8, just because my gut tells me that's where it's going to be.
All right. Well, thank you, Bob. Thanks, Jack. We appreciate you coming in and
You bet.
doing this training.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's got your contact info, and so if anything comes up or they have anything, they can reach out to you.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. See you later.